Welcome to the Think Yourself Healthy podcast, where you meet the intersection of mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Heather Duranja, founder of Nutrition Vixen, registered dietitian, nutritionist, personal trainer, and cognitive behavioral specialist. I'm a mother, author, self-improvement junkie, and recovering perfectionist turned professional half-asser. Each week, I'll be bringing on a guest or a topic that will help you go from surviving to thriving. Are you with me? All right, here we go with today's episode. So today I have Lauren Rismiller with us. She is a beautiful human and she is so talented. Literally, her background is art. She is an artist in every single means, I think with the exception of singing. That's the only thing you don't do?
Not outside of the shower.
Yeah, okay. But seriously, Lauren is such a talented human. She literally does everything, paints, fashion, set design, you name it. She is so talented and she has turned her passion for art into a career as a bartender in New York City, and you are a mixologist, which is just so cool. So Lauren and I have a very long history, and she's actually a client, and we have been working together for quite some time. So the reason Lauren's on the show today is because we're going to talk about her specific circumstances, struggling with autoimmune disease, anxiety, depression, and how she has recovered from a decade-long struggle with prescription addiction. So I personally feel that Lauren is going to massively impact the audience today with her story. And I am so, so, so honored that you are, so brave to actually talk about this, because I think that there are so many people out there who are struggling, have absolutely no idea where to get started, and are judging themselves for struggling with all of these thoughts. And so I think that hearing your story is going to give others permission to know that wherever they're at in their journey, it's okay, and that there is hope. There is hope, and there are actual actions that they can take to feeling better. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Of course, Heather.
Oh, I feel. So Lauren, I'm going to open up the stage, no pun intended. I'm going to open up the stage to you to kind of just talk a little bit about who you are and the history that brought us together.
Well, that's always a hard thing to start with, but yeah, so obviously you said I'm an artist, I'm a bartender. I've always been into art and drinks. It is what it is. But when I want to say in 8th grade, at least, I was really struggling with anxiety and depression. I had gone through a lot of traumatic times in my life, as a lot of children do, unfortunately. And at the time, it's depression and anxiety. You just don't see a way out. And of course, when I finally talked to my parents about it, the only thing we really knew what to do was take me to a therapist who recommended I go on medication, and not just go on medication. At one point I was even hospitalized, which was also on her recommendation. And yeah, so that they always told me that prescription is kind of like, our prescription medications for anxiety and depression is that it helps, and it's kind of going to help you and help you live through this traumatic or whatever. And that it will help you. So of course, I was young. I was very young, and I didn't know much about it. So I was put on this medication and stayed on this medication for over 10 years. And, medication for anxiety and depression, it does something to you. And eventually and honestly, not many of them worked correctly. And it was just one medication after other, and we had to try more and more different types of medication. And eventually we got to this one medication called Seroquel. It's an antipsychotic, but one of its off-label uses is used for depression with anxiety. So I figured, hey, we could try it. What the fuck? Nothing else has worked, might as well.
Right.
And when I was put on it, I started losing a bunch of weight. And of course, I'm still struggling with a lot of things, which includes an eating disorder. So of course, when I started seeing this weight loss, I'm like, okay, does this drug necessarily help? Not really, but it helps with my appearance. So that helps, in turn, my own self-image, which is not a healthy way to improve your self-image. So I stayed on the Seroquel itself for a total of 8 years. And eventually I stopped losing the weight, and and then I started regaining it.
Okay.
And it just kept gaining and gaining. And of course that messes you up. In the middle of all this, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, rheumatoid arthritis, which eventually it was found to be related to hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which I've had basically since birth. So meanwhile, while I was on this drug, I was struggling with this diagnosis and how to medicate, well, not medicate, but how to live with this condition. And basically just figure out what it's like to have a life with an autoimmune disease, because honestly, those don't go away. So, while I was diagnosed with this and on the Seroquel, I started working with you, and it, not a lot of what you had me do worked necessarily. And I kept getting more and more frustrated. And I was just so sunk into this life with an autoimmune disease that it just got even worse and worse and worse. And, it messed me up. And eventually I discovered a new philosophy that really did help me turn my view on life. And it kind of started to elevate the anxiety. And then I started taking B12 supplements, and that elevated it even more, to the point that, okay, maybe I can try not going on Seroquel. So I tried cutting Seroquel out, and tapering it down as you should. And by this time I was on a pretty large dose of Seroquel, like somewhere between 500 and 600 milligrams, which is a lot. Yeah. And
so I recall, throughout the history of our relationship, there was a point where I had to have a conversation with you and say, look, you are so attached to the diagnoses, the anxiety, the depression, the autoimmune disease, that was part of what was hindering your ability to actually take the action steps that were necessary in order to start healing. When we had that conversation, I recall telling you, we're going to have to take a step back from this relationship. And when you're ready, then you can reach back out to me, and we can have a conversation about how to get you healing. And so we took a long break from each other, and then you came back.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the deciding factor for you that allowed you to reach back out and say, I'm ready?
Honestly, there's a lot of that I don't remember, but what I do remember is basically breaking down in front of a class. Because that's when I started to realize that it was noticeable that I was really struggling to other people. Mm-hmm. And that's about what I remember. A lot of it is a haze, basically. But that's what I do remember. And I remember having to leave the class, obviously, because I broke down. And that's kind of when I was like, okay, no, this is not right.
Right. Did you ever see a life for yourself where you wouldn't be taking all of the medications?
No, honestly, no, because, at the time, that's what I was told that I was going to be on it for the rest of my life. Like, I was always told, like, hey, it's a chemical imbalance. Like, you need these medications to be yourself.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with it, that it's like diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always was under the impression that I will always be on this medication.
So
Um,
when you and I had a conversation and I said to you, hey, Lauren, you know, what if I told you you didn't have to be on all of these medications? How frightening was that for you when we had that conversation? What kind of thoughts, you know, occurred, and what allowed you to be able to accept that as an actual possibility?
well, at first I was like, oh, no, that's bullshit. It's obviously not what I was told.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but, you know, part of this philosophy is learning that you can't listen to other people. You got to listen to yourself first. Um, and when I was put on that B12 vitamin supplements, and the anxiety started elevating like big time, I was like, what? Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I don't need a psych med to feel better. Maybe I just need, I don't know, vitamins, which kind of blew my mind. So, and here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that that's, you know, an important fact. A lot of individuals who are on a significant amount of medications, it's going to have a very negative impact on their gut health. And so when gut health is compromised, there is a direct correlation between the gut and the brain. And it's going to contribute to having more anxiety, more depression, because our gut is compromised. And so B12 is a very vital nutrient in terms of, you know, it plays so many roles. And if our gut functioning is compromised, we're not going to be able to actually convert B12 into the active form that our body can actually absorb. So when you got on the supplement, I'm not a big promoter of a ton of supplements, but there are certain things that are necessary in order to get a person in leading them in the right direction. So for you, it was really, let's start taking this B12 vitamin so that we can increase your energy, help with, because if I recall, when you and I started working together, you slept how many hours a day?
Somewhere between 10 and 12.
Yeah, 10 and 12. So that, you had zero energy. You were constantly fatigued. And when a person is walking around and not having energy and feeling fatigued, that's having a very negative impact on their mentality in terms of how they can be productive, how they can actually achieve things. And if we're not achieving things, that's going to have a negative consequence in terms of our thought process of, the value that we're bringing on a daily basis, right? So it becomes this very, hamster wheel type of process. So when you started taking the B vitamins and having better energy and not requiring as much sleep, what did that do to your mentality?
Obviously it changed it. I still slept a lot because of the Seroquel, because that's what it does, is it just knocks you out. But after I started getting more energy, I was like, oh, okay. I started noticing a lot more. I started being able to think a lot more. And the biggest thing I did notice was I was able to read again.
Okay.
Because for a long time, it was very, very hard for me to read. And this was, I was already at a college level reading when I was in second grade. So of course this was like a little confusing why that happened. And then when I started getting on these B12 and the anxiety started disappearing and getting more energy, I noticed I could read again. I was like, holy shit. Okay. All right. This is weird.
Boost your confidence.
It did. And it not only did it boost my confidence, but I'm like, okay, maybe there's something really wrong with how I've been going about this for, a decade. So, yeah,
if I recall, I want to say that there was a point where you were on at least 20 plus medications.
Yeah, not at all at one time, but I think the most I've ever been on at one time is somewhere between like, I think it was about 6 different psych medications at one time. But yeah, the list is pretty extensive.
Yeah. And for all of the medications that you were taking, they all had side effects, correct?
A lot of side effects, yes.
And so you found yourself in this downward spiral of just feeling helpless and hopeless because for every attempt through the use of medication, you ended up having more symptoms that were impacting your body in a negative way and also were contributing to the autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
So tell me about how the drugs affected your autoimmune disorder and how it halted your progress with trying to feel better and be in a body that you could accept.
Well, the thing that I kind of noticed after getting off the Seroquel is my hair started growing. Mm-hmm. And what I think was happening is it screwed up my gut. Like, mm-hmm. I was on a lot of pain medications as well, which would give me like stomach ulcers, but there was some serious problem with me being able to absorb nutrients, basically, or anything at all in my gut. And like I would have to take double the dose of pain medication, double the dose of vitamins to see a sliver of effect. Mm-hmm. And when you're not able to absorb this stuff, basically everything gets halted. At one point, my heart stopped in the middle of the night, like literally stopped for a good 15 seconds. Yeah, it messed me up. And of course, like it would knock me out for like 10 plus hours. And mm-hmm. It's not really good sleep anyway, because it's induced. And even then, sometimes it didn't work. Yeah, but mostly it was just noticing that my gut basically didn't work at all. Mm-hmm. I would be constipated. I would be in more pain than normal, mm-hmm. even with pain medications. I mentioned stomach ulcers, the heart, my skin I would have a bunch of cystic acne, which, I mean, I still get cysts every once in a while, but I mean, with, the medication, it was just kind of out of control. Right. My hair would fall out at one point. If it grew at all, like it was just a lot of symptoms that I slowly started noticing that were actual side effects, like the weight gain and just being sluggish all the time and fatigue. I mean, it just really screwed up my system. Right. But definitely the gut not working was probably the biggest noticeable difference.
Well, I have to commend your bravery because you have been such a brave soul throughout this whole process. I will never forget having that conversation with you, encouraging you to imagine a life beyond the medication use and how you could actually look and feel better without having the medication and how the medication was inhibiting your ability to actually get the results that you were looking for in all aspects of your life. Now, one thing that I do want to mention is that I'm not a promoter of the use of medication. I don't think that should be our first attempt. There's a lot of things that we can do utilizing lifestyle changes that can help us feel better, conquer depression, conquer anxiety. But sometimes it is necessary to be on medication. For instance, when you initially were diagnosed with having the anxiety and the depression, you just weren't equipped. You didn't have the skills that were needed as a child to be able to handle that without the medication. So for other individuals and other families, because this wasn't a choice just on your own. This was a family choice that was made on your behalf. What would you say to that family right now who is contemplating getting their child on a medication to help with anxiety and depression?
I would say take a step back and realize that a lot of the times anxiety and depression are symptoms of something else, and they're not conditions. Like, in my case, the anxiety and depression were symptoms of the Ehlers-Danlos, which of course was not diagnosed until I was about 25. And also the result of vitamin deficiencies and a lot of deficiencies that I am more at risk at because of an autoimmune disease. So before you take that step, because that's a huge, huge step, it's not a flippant decision. I would say get everything checked out first and make sure everything is discovered, because you never know why the anxiety and depression is there. And I mean, I went through a lot of trauma as a kid. So, I mean, I was going to be prone to anxiety and depression in the first place because of my conditions. But with this trauma, of course, I naturally found my way there.
Right.
But the problem with going on these drugs was I wasn't able to process it. And currently off these drugs, I'm still learning how to process this stuff. I'm still learning how to process emotions. And it's a struggle, but I didn't have a chance to do that while I was on these drugs because it just put me into this haze. So,
kind
yeah.
of comatose state, just existing.
Pretty much. Like if you've ever had a brownout, quote unquote, that's basically what it was. I can remember bits and pieces here, but there's a lot I don't remember. And yeah, I was never able to fully come to terms with a lot of stuff I went through. And and it feels like, sometimes it feels like I lost a good decade of my life, but, I'm glad I'm here now. So that's the point. But yeah, I would say to those families, like, treat them as symptoms first before you treat them as a disorder. Because because this medication can really make things so much worse.
Yeah, I think that's such valid advice that, the anxiety and the depression most likely are a symptom of something else occurring that needs to be evaluated. And you can do that by seeking help outside of just medication, working with a nutritionist to get diet in order, evaluating gut health, getting lab testing done to determine what kind of deficiencies could potentially be playing a role. We know that vitamin D was definitely something that was having a negative impact on all of this for you. The B vitamins were deficient. I mean, there was just a plethora of things that were working against you. And then taking the medication only hindered, impacted that in a more negative way. So I think that's great advice. Treat it as a symptom instead of a diagnosis. Try to utilize all other approaches before just making that your first go-to. I think is just absolutely beautiful, beautiful advice. So kind of talk to me about the withdrawal process that you went through getting off all of these medications, specifically the Seroquel, because we know Seroquel is one of the hardest medications to get off. It's very similar to basically getting off heroin.
Yep. And, I wouldn't have believed it, but yeah, I went through it. So when I went off of, because before I came off of the Seroquel, I came off of Wellbutrin and Remeron. And those weren't that hard to get off of. I mean, I was a little shaky here and there, but, it's fine. It happened. And then the Seroquel, it's recommended that you taper off. So that's what I started doing. I tapered off. And yeah, it was a disaster. And basically what you see in the movies with the shaking, dizzy spells, sweating, everything. That is basically what I went through for basically every time I tapered off, I would have
another
bout of it. And at one point I was so sick of going through this withdrawal and then feeling better and going through withdrawal again. I just said, you know what, screw it. And I went cold turkey, which
I
is
did
both.
not recommend.
What?
Which I did not recommend.
No, you didn't. This is not Heather's decision. It was mine.
Yeah. But
Fully my decision. Yeah, so I was shaky. I was dizzy. I like even warned my coworkers, I'm like, if you see me pass out, like this is what's happening. Like, you know, it was throwing up, nausea. I had severe insomnia. I think I went 3 days without sleeping once. It was just bad, and it looked exactly like it did in the movies. Like, and that's kind of when I started to realize, oh, this is an actual addiction. Like, this is not
right.
This was actually a thing. This is something my body and my mind needed. At one point I hid every single medication bottle I could because I did not want to go back to it. But it was terrible. It was absolutely awful. And I don't ever want to go through that ever again. Yeah.
It was definitely a process that you went through.
Yes.
It did not happen overnight. It took a long period of time to transition from medication to non-medication.
Yeah.
And while you were weaning off of the medication, we were definitely utilizing other lifestyle approaches to help manage some of those symptoms that were occurring. So talk to me about the importance of nutrition and fitness to treat your anxiety and depression post medication, like off medication.
I'll be honest, it's taken me a little bit to really understand the importance of it. But lately I've really gotten back into fitness because it really does help my anxiety. Just getting there, working out, sweating it out, like it really, really, really does help. And it also releases some frustration, and it's got so many benefits to it. And because, you know, my anxiety it's still there. It's not like I've mentioned before, I'm still learning how to deal with all this emotional struggles that I'm going through and insecurities that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still get anxiety over it, as anybody would.
Mm-hmm.
And going and working out or taking a brisk walk or something actually really helps calm it. And nutritionally, it's the same thing, eating every day, eating constantly. And now that I can absorb everything that I'm eating in my gut, I'm starting to see more health benefits because of it. You know, my skin's looking better. My hair is growing. I cannot state how much I'm happy about my hair growing. Just more energy, just feeling better in general. It makes me feel better about myself. And now that I'm seeing results from the nutrition because I can absorb everything, it's very encouraging and makes me feel 1,000 times better.
Right. Well, and how much weight did you lose in the process?
About 30 pounds total.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I think a good 10 pounds of it was just from working out and being more active. And then another good, I think about probably 17 pounds of it was just getting off of the Seroquel.
Right.
And
so losing, I'm sorry. So inflammation plays a role when we're on medications and the gut is compromised. It contributes to inflammation. And so part of that weight loss that you have experienced, actually the initial part of the weight loss was directly correlated to reducing inflammation in the body. And then, so then as you start improving your nutrition habits, you know, that supports being able to support the metabolism, burning fat, actually losing body fat in coordination with the increased activity.
Yes.
So I know that there was a lot of resistance to things initially when you and I started working. Would you say that through the process you and I have gone through, that you had to rethink your approach when it comes to doing the things that you thought were going to work?
Absolutely. Yeah, I traded in a lot of my old habits for new habits. Like better options. Like instead of taking heavy pain medications that have a lot of side effects, I started using medical marijuana, which really helped my inflammation and the pain. And like the worst side effect there is the munchies. So like I will happily trade that in for stomach ulcers. And honestly, it didn't make much of a difference anyway, because it has reduced my inflammation. And I've lost about 5 pounds of just inflammation when I started using medical marijuana. So it was just things like that, you know, trading in exercise and vitamins for, you know, anxiety medication, trading in this for that, and just choosing better, more informed options, because before I wasn't informed, my family wasn't informed. It's nobody's fault except for, you know, the people that put me on this stuff. So just being informed and trading in these decisions for one another has really changed things.
So talk to me a little bit about how talk to me about sugar.
Sugar. Yeah. I had a lot of issues with wanting sugar all the time. Yeah, when I was on all this medication, I would just, oh my God, I just needed sugar. I would like take spoonfuls of it. Like it was bad. Like I just needed sugar. And after I started getting off these medications, I'm like, wait, I don't need this anymore.
Did you ever imagine that you were going to have a life beyond being addicted to sugar?
Nope.
So in the past, you had many attempts while using the medication to try and get off of the sugar. But talk to me a little bit about that. How did that feel with every attempt to try and get off the sugar?
Well, it kind of felt like trying to get off a Seroquel. You just have like all of these, you know, you just have this thought coming back into your head like, oh my God, I need this. I need this. I need this. I am going to die if I don't get this in my body. Right. Like I am not going to be a good person without it. You do not want to see me off of this. So, I mean, yeah, it's definitely a different form of addiction that,
exactly,
you know, and it made me really rethink what is addiction, you know?
Yeah.
We're always told that it's, you know, heroin and marijuana and like all of these nasty drugs. But in reality, it's like, no, your body can be addicted to almost anything. And your mindset can be addicted to almost anything as well. And yeah, something as simple as sugar was kind of really made me think like, oh no, this is an actual addiction. And, you know, it's maybe not as extreme as like heroin or something, but it's still like, you still have those thoughts and it still impacts your life in a way. It makes you gain a lot of weight. So, you know. Yeah.
I mean, the transformation that I've seen you go throughout the process of working together has just been the most beautiful. I mean, for me as a coach, to be able to have an opportunity to assist you throughout this journey has just been such a blessing. I think there are so many people out there who are struggling and were in the position of being the old Lauren, right? And they don't feel like there is any way out. It feels helpless. It feels hopeless. And to be able to see where you're at now and to have an opportunity to help get you where you are has just been such a blessing. This is the most rewarding part of my job, is to be able to see the Lauren that now presents, you know, blossom. And the journey will be continued, right? Because now you're having to really learn who Lauren is and really be able to understand developing new behaviors, new thought process, the whole thing. But it's such a beautiful thing to experience. So I'm so proud of you. I'm so, so proud of you.
Thank you.
So tell me, is there any tips that you have that you would like to give anybody out there who is struggling and feeling helpless and feeling hopeless? What kind of advice do you offer them?
I would say find someone to help you. A lot of my life was struggling against that because every time somebody helped me, I got screwed over.
Okay.
But be careful of who helps you. Like, be careful what you do. Just absolutely investigate everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because you never know what kind of help you're going to get. But the point is, struggling through it by yourself is not effective.
Mm-hmm.
Also, remember, sometimes you have to go through the bad to get better. Because honestly, I would have been a terrible person if I hadn't gone through this. So just be informed.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think personally, that in our life, the things that happen to us are happening for us, not necessarily to us. And I've struggled with a lot of adversity in my lifetime, which I think allows me to be able to help individuals in a way that is productive because I've been there. I know what it feels like to be in your shoes and to struggle. And I feel like that's the biggest blessing I've been gifted with in my life is those experiences and being able to pull from those experiences to put myself in your shoes and help you guide through, develop that toolbox, as I like to call it. You have so many tools now. And there was a lot of resistance in the beginning to developing that toolbox or building that toolbox, but your toolbox is so equipped. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
So what are some of your favorite tools that you have put in that box?
Well, of course, we've gone through the exercise and fitness and, adopting a different philosophy that is more in line with my experiences and with what I went through was a huge, huge part of that toolbox. Because, everything I went through, all the trauma, the people that were trying to guide me believed in a philosophy that in the past has hurt me. So finding that particular philosophy really, really changed a lot of things for me. It really changed my view on a lot of things just because it came to me naturally. And it kind of felt like, oh shit, no, this was who I'm supposed to be and who I'm going to be. So that is something I still open up my books and read them all the time because, it helps. It helps with the anxiety. It helps with the depression. So that would be a big, big part of it. And just continuing with that, like another thing that I've really taken to doing is I've always kind of grew up with like tarot cards. Mm-hmm. And whether you believe in them or not, whatever. But basically what they do is they kind of help your psychology. It's basically a way to guide your psychology. Because part of the philosophy that I follow is, you need these kinds of representations and ceremonies in order to basically get your mind, or some people need these ceremonies in order to get their mind on the right track. It's just tools of psychology. Absolutely. So I've started using these tarot cards as basically tools of my psychology. And again, I'm not particularly a big believer in the magic part of it, but I do believe that it really does help.
Well, I think that it helps you. I'm a big promoter of rituals. We talk about these.
Absolutely.
I'm somewhat woo-woo in many ways.
I know, I love it.
But I think that it's important to incorporate those kind of rituals in our life because they help us with developing consistency. It's just like with the vitamins, right? You can't take the vitamins 3 days, expect to have some sort of impactful transformation, and then stop taking them and think that you're going to feel better. You have to build small behaviors and stay consistent with those behaviors in order to see the long-term outcomes. So I am a promoter of rituals because they help you with establishing the consistency and giving you some sort of platform that you can follow that allows you to feel confident with that behavior change. And then as you're practicing it, all of a sudden you don't have to think about it anymore. It just becomes a natural part of who you are and what you do, which is beautiful. And so, I love the fact that you do the tarot cards and that you have found them to be very helpful and beneficial with your journey, because it works for you. So everyone's toolbox is going to look very different. The reality is that we're all a work in progress. And when we can set realistic expectations for ourselves, we can set ourselves up for success, but we have to rethink the approach. And when we can accept that, sometimes we do need help, we do need guidance in order to have accountability and be able to recognize beyond ourselves where there is room for improvement, that can be a very beautiful, beautiful thing. So I applaud you. I applaud your courage. I know that there's a lot of people listening right now who are probably struggling or have struggled and really don't know, they're struggling and they don't know where to turn. So I think you had to go through this in order to get to this point in your life where you can take your experience and share it with others so that they know they're not stuck. There is hope. There are things that they can do. So is there anything else you'd like to say to the listeners before we end our conversation?
I don't believe so.
All right. Well, I'm so proud of you, Lauren. Thank you so very much for sharing your experience with us. You're just such a beautiful human to watch transform. I can't wait for everyone to have an opportunity to hear this. I look forward to watching you grow, girlfriend. You are just so beautiful.
Of course. Thank you, Heather.
Oh, one thing I do want to ask you real quick.
What's up?
Sleep. How are you sleeping?
A lot better. And I only sleep about 6-7 hours a night.
And your energy levels?
Just as good. I mean, it's great. I don't sleep my life away anymore. It's great.
So that allows you to actually have an opportunity to fit activity into your life, right?
Yep. Oh yeah. I have a lot more time now.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I meant to ask you that earlier and forgot. I think that's an important thing to mention, is that you're sleeping better, your energy levels are improved, you actually have time to have a life now that you desire and do the things that you love, regardless of being a bartender and working odd hours. You're able to make it all work, and that's
Yep, that's just part of life. So,
well, guys, make sure that you go to Instagram and follow Lauren at art.of.Lauren. She is an amazing human, a beautiful human. She's so, so, so talented. Can the audience reach out to you for any questions if they have questions?
Absolutely. It's my personal account, so feel free to look and reach out and ask me about stuff. I mean, it's just, a view into my life, and I want to share it with people. So
I'm so proud of you. Thank you for being so brave and making the time to have this interview with me and share your story. It's a very beautiful and impactful one. So thank you.
Of course, Heather. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for spending this time with me on the Think Yourself Healthy podcast. I'm so grateful that you stopped by. If you could just take a minute to share this episode with someone you think who would love it, it would be amazing. Take a screenshot that you've listened to the episode and tag at Think Yourself Healthy and myself at Nutrition Vixen so that I can share it. Leave a review on iTunes to let us know how much you loved being here and what you want to hear next. Until next time, don't forget to think yourself healthy. Thanks again, guys. Bye.